I'm going to talk a little bit more about Sally's experience. As a founding director of Lighting Design International, Sally has led numerous lighting design projects for esteemed brands, including the Corinthia London, the Savoy London, the Harrods, and so forth. She's also a writer of 3 well-received, successful books on lighting, and her latest book, titled Inspired by Light, will be published in October 2021, this year. She received 2020 Lifetime Achievement Award from the LIT Awards for her work in lighting and is one of the newest jury members. Let's welcome Sally.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Sally.
Hello. I'm delighted to be asked, and thank you so much for that wonderful, wonderful introduction.
You're welcome. Very welcome.
Shall I begin to share some of my experience?
Yes, please. Yeah, we're very excited to listen to you and your sharing of your experience in lighting design.
Well, I think lighting is very much an emotional experience because you stay in different atmospheres and it influences how you feel. And so lighting to me can totally transform a building. So I've been lucky enough in the last 30 years to be able to work on so many projects, from historical projects to restaurants, to spas, to bowling alleys, to offices, exteriors and exteriors. So during that journey, I've had a wealth of experience. It's interesting to think that I've lived through 2 generations. There was first the halogen generation, which seems so long ago now, and then the LED generation. And so much has changed. I've been lucky to be around, and there are lots of things that I think at the heart of my lighting beliefs. We've heard a lot about the science of lighting, but the way I work as a lighting designer, and I need the science around me to provide the information, is intuitive. It's a bit like an artist with a palette. I think about lighting a bit like having my own palette and brushing it round to create the right medium for a room. I'm right at the heart, and that's where lighting should be, of the architectural process. Good lighting is integrated from the beginning. And one of the things I want to do is create stunning visual spaces. And I'm so lucky to have worked on so many things to actually make that possible. I want to start because lighting is very difficult, unless it's around you, to understand how it works. And I've got this little changing video to describe what lighting can do, because to me, lighting creates the magic. And how does lighting create that magic? Here we have a kitchen diner. You can see it's got a few seats by the bar. It's got some decorative fitting and downlighting, providing adequate illumination for cooking, but it's lacking in atmosphere. So what we need to do is actually change that mood. Do you see how the bar came into focus? And now by bringing up the textures and the timbers behind the seating, that also suddenly draws your eye in. And isn't that space so much more inviting than it was to start with? And that's what the lighting designer can do. It can extend your view and extend your impression. Take this space, another rather interesting space. I love the way that it's sort of backlit, these glass blocks, probably with maybe 3,500 Kelvin in color temperature. And it's cool, it's hardworking space. But what would happen in the evening to make it change? Let's see. Do you see how gradually the light emphasis has come onto the inside? And you get the light streaming down the inside of the blocks, which almost makes them look grey, and the grout is white. And there's a totally different ambience with how that lighting is. I think it's one of the most remarkable tools a designer can have, because actually being able to transform a space and doing nothing else, but actually, with the touch of a button, creating that difference. It's almost like waving a magic wand. And that's why I call how lighting creates the magic. Another thing that's very important in my schemes is perception. It's what to light and what not to light, understanding texture. And perception's an interesting thing. You could have a whole seminar on perception. But there was one thing I thought I'd focus on just quickly, is contrast can be used to trick the brain into thinking things are brighter than they are. Our brain will also make up for the effect of shadow and perceives things as brighter than they may be. So look at this bar in the center, and the background is darker on the left-hand side and goes to lighter on the right-hand side. Now just imagine, you think, therefore, so does the central bar. But that's the central bar, the same color, and that's all done with a trick of the eye. So your eye is an enormously clever thing, and it's an enormously clever as well in the way it works, because as you know, when you take a picture with a camera often, it often will overexpose things. But what your eye does when you're seeing it is it provides the infill light. We've been talking a lot about how you design things. The circadian rhythm is very much spoken about, and we've heard about it. And I think intuitively, I've always designed like that. I've always wanted workspaces to be cooler, and I've wanted the home spaces and restaurants to be much warmer. I think it's because you think about relaxing in the evening as there's no longer daylight. Lighting candles, lighting fires automatically makes you want that warm spectrum. The sunlight at dawn is warm, and at dusk is warm, and sunset. So just think of what it does. And that's why there's been so much talk about actually the body requiring that rhythm. It's been very interesting also hearing what we've heard about today, about all those other discoveries, but it's also part of the spectrum. And I want to just show how sometimes in our way we design using different light sources for different things. I've taken Harrods as an example for a couple of these slides, because it's almost like a department with one store, and the requirements change. It changes whether you're buying like a high technological equipment to whether you're dining there. So here in Harrods Technology, the background light on that walkway was 3,500 Kelvin. It was crisp, it drew you through. But then we wanted to make it more inviting. And actually it's slightly warmer to actually go into each area, of about 3,000 Kelvin and even elements of 2.7. But it's that change, but it's still quite white, it's still quite crisp, and it's that high energy to make you buy. Totally different, though, is the experience in the historical listed dining halls. And that came with their own challenge. Definitely a warmer light was required. There's no natural light there. So the idea was to immediately make the diner relaxed. Relaxed to linger, relaxed to dine. And here we had the decorative lighting, do you see in those globes with a warm light source? But because we were limited, because it was a historical building, we could only use certain points to get our power. So that light fitting, and hence the detail on the left, was there to provide an uplight to the space for infill lighting, and even spots were mounted on it to actually provide some architectural highlights. But I like and believe in layering of light. I want to create the human scale, bringing that light source down to the decorative fittings at bar level and the decorative light just around the counter. Do you see there's a linear light that gives you a low glow of about 2,200 just where you're sitting, immediately getting a reflected warm light source. This was repeated in the sushi bar as well, with this whole idea of the backlight. Here, again, everything had to be incorporated within the canopy, and we've got pin spots to pick up the food so that the food would be displayed well. But we all know that it's very horrible to sit under a downlight. Hence, those glass grills were actually given to give a soft facial light to actually make you see things. And this also made you feel flattered as the diner, because there's nothing more horrible than feeling under spotlight, the shadows on your face. And part of the experience of hospitality is to ensure not only does the food look good, but the diner's experience and the diner being comfortable. But lighting goes beyond that experience. That was two experiences. It actually changes how you visualize a space. And I thought, take a simple corridor. You can make that space big or small. Take the pools of light going down the center, very much more dramatic. It seems that the ceiling is lower. Change that direction of light to uplights, lighting up the walls. It seems a wider space, and the indirect light makes the ceiling also feel higher and brighter. Or probably lighting, and as I've tried to say, there should be a combination. You should be able to play with space and visualize it by being able to do both effects and maybe tuning them together. Now, taking that knowledge and bringing it into hospitality. This is a wonderful at Astir in Greece, wonderful Four Seasons hotel, big double height dining hall. How do you create interest? What's really important is actually creating interest with the decorative pendants to actually bring a focus of light, and they fill the space. But what's more important is the private moments and intimacy of having lighting within the shelving, much warmer, 2,200 Kelvin, 2,400 maybe in the pendants, and that low glow, making each individual dining experience softer and more intimate. Big space in the Café Royal, and then the little lobby areas to the side, much softer, focus on the coffee table, and then the backlight to the mirrors gives a soft, indirect ambience, so you get the combination of direct and indirect. Or here in another classical, the Fitzroy Principal in Fitzrovia, London. Old, dramatic Victorian building, masses of marble, quite austere, but suddenly made to feel welcoming by the backlight of the screen, lighting integrated into the displays and localized lamplight, and within a chandelier, creating a narrow focus onto the coffee table on the left. Or we're now moving to St. Regis in Florence, and it shows how traveling the world, using one's innovative light thoughts, one can change the perception of things. Here we've got a combination where we've got a warm light source of 2,400 in the decorative, maybe even 2,200 in the chandeliers, and 2,700 Kelvin for lighting the architectural elements. And each of those builds up the palette. You can mix, if you think about it, color temperatures, if you want to create different areas of focus and definition. In the corridor, the experience is, again, with a 2,700 picking up the focuses, whether it's the urn and the art, but a warmer color temperature of 2,400 in the decorative things. And it's those balance between the two that creates the drama to your room. And we talked about earlier, the thought about bringing that comfort straight to your hotel room. Of old, you could have a chandelier with lamps, picture lights, and that's quite a bright, crisp, traditional solution, or a more contemporary solution of linear light, backlighting mirrors, focus under the counter, layers of light with a much warmer light to give that intimate feel. And I've taken this to an urban situation where backlight creates the warmth. And it's very interesting to think how layering of light is important. If we hadn't had the backlight of the headboard, you'd have just had the glare from the single light source, which is a warm filament style LED lamp, but it's actually quite warm, but it would be quite stark. What we've done by the soft uplight from the headboard is been able to dim the light source, but you perceive the main lighting is coming from that, and the layered effect of lighting under the banquette. Or take this with the idea of a tunable light. We have the wonderful thing of a whiter light for the daytime, but then tuning to much warmer light to give that softness at night. And then even looking out to the terrace beyond, you get that wonderful experience of a warmer light there. But bars and activities there are no different. You can see here under the banquette, the way we've created the layers. You can also understand how lighting responds. It's the same color temperature, it's 2,200. The reflected light, in fact, it's 2,400 on the left, with the reflected light of the timber being much warmer. And then the soft backlight up the blue curtains, appearing whiter because of the blues. But it's interesting, and then a narrow pin spot for the food. But the bounce back from the warmth of the floor helps give that environment. Then under the bar, we've got the decorative fittings on the right-hand side, and then the sparkle through the bar. All the lighting sparkling and focused is 2.7. All the warm light is either 2,400 or 2,200. But continuing the experience, I never feel that a guest powder room should go without being looked at, because it's part of the experience of dining in a hotel. And these days, so much adventure can be had. Do you see with these colourful tiles? It's also by having the lighting integrated under the vanity to reflect off the floor. There's also the halo lighting of the mirror. That dramatizes the wallpaper there. But on the right-hand side, we've actually also introduced an element of front light. And I show these both because actually the element of front light to the front of the mirror will ensure that the experience of the person looking at their face will be even better. The one with the backlight won't see their face so much, but the one with the front light will. It'll give a much better effect. Another effect that is so important with light is understanding the adventure into a spa. This was a very clean, very cool entrance. And therefore, what we did was we tried to minimize downlights. We've got uplights to the textured wall in a 2,700, then the warmer on the linear of 2,400, giving that slight golden glow. Within the space, you've got the contrast of the warmth of the fire, within the concealed lighting, picking up the texture of the lacquer, much cooler. And it's interesting to think that the softness there is still there. And in the future, with what we've been hearing about earlier, you can get that soft feeling by changing the spectral content. Something for us all to learn about. The warm color here, immediately with the same color temperatures as the whiter spa, gives you much more warmth. So you can see that one of the things in creating space is not only understanding the lighting, is playing with the palette of materials used and working with the designer to achieve the desired effect. And I rather love journeys. I think corridors are often forgotten and underestimated, but I put this in because I love the effect of the warmth coming in, the pools of light, and these portals, making what could be a dull corridor really uninteresting. But suddenly, it's very interesting. Understanding about spas, I put these two pools together, is because a dark palette has a totally different feel to a cool palette. You get a much more warm, intimate effect on the left-hand side. The other gives a much more energized effect and actually shows that there's a much cooler color temperature. And in this case, we actually could tune it. But actually, you could also, for some architectural elements, keep the cool color, but still change the spectral content, as we heard earlier. And you see here with the tuning, you could see how the right-hand image became much warmer at night. But think of outside as well. We've got one should continue using the warm light at night outside. Why go cold? Because actually a 7,000 Kelvin gives you that intimacy. And when combined with firelight and candles, it makes a change. And even when you have the pendants, you've got the focus of landscape. All of these are part of our experience. And you can see that in each of these images, there is so much to share. And each one has a different design philosophy, all that is intuitive, but has a science behind.
Thank you very much, Sally.
I hope it was, yeah, I hope it showed some of the philosophy. I tried to share some of my design ideas as well. So I hope that's as intended. And I just don't know if you've got any questions.
Yeah, it's a really lovely experience that we see all your design projects in the beautiful photos. Of course, there are a lot of discussion points there. So on behalf of the audience, I prepared 3 questions. So can we share a moment to discuss over those questions?
Well, I think you asked me about human-centric lighting in my projects. And I think that as an intuitive designer, I've been doing that a long time. And I sort of explained that at the beginning, because I think it was, if you're an intuitive thing, you design for what you feel the mood should be. And that's why I think, and it's been interesting how lighting has changed in cultural terms, that many times in hot countries, they felt they needed a very cool source, even at night, because they felt they wanted to feel cooler. But actually later, people have learned that actually, when it's dark outside, one can go warmer. And it makes a difference in your feeling and perception. And I think it's just being intuitive as a designer. Every time I go into space, I have a feeling of how I think it should be lit.
Well, Sally, it seems to me as if you have been practicing the principles of human-centric lighting in your lighting design projects for a long time. Most pictures that you brought today showed lobby or lounge areas, dining halls, and other hotel interiors, where the lighting adds such an inviting, cozy atmosphere. So the basic color temperatures that you like to install there are like 27 or 24 or even down to 2200 kelvins. So on the other hand side, well, actually you showed some photos of places like the Hera Technology Department and the indoor swimming pools where some cooler CCT lightings were used. So you must have been doing this since before you learned about the circadian rhythm and how lighting makes influences on it. So how have you implemented the concept of human-centric lighting so accurately?
I think intuitively, and also what sometimes the color temperature is determined by what you're lighting. It's not only the mood, it's what you're lighting. And I think I'm well aware that some of what you've done is one is influenced by daylight. I'm influenced all the time by daylight. I'm influenced by the light and shadows of daylight. So I'm always exploring the perspectives of color and brightness. But also, I'm absolutely fascinated by what was discussed about this third dimension, that actually, normally the circadian rhythm is just thought about, as you explained, with the color temperature. But the concept that if you've got an architectural space and you wanted to actually keep a cooler color temperature, I might still want the candles and things. You can now explore some of those ideas by just still giving the same effect, but by changing the spectral content of the light. And I thought your earlier talk really explained that.
Well, I think, it was a very beneficial for both of us. Through this webinar, we can learn from each other. To me, I mean, I'm an engineer who turned to a marketing manager a few years ago. But I mean, for me, you are totally an artist, and I feel like I should learn a lot more about the real art projects where I can implement the science. Very good. Let me move on to the second question. So Sally, yes. However, the lighting design space that you explored was two-dimensional in my point of view. You made use of, changing color and brightness of your light settings, let alone the architectural elements of lighting like layering, angles, and etc. And these two dimensions, the color and brightness, are both related to the visual perception. Now that we have the third dimension of lighting design space, as I explained in my talk, the non-visual effect of light that affects people's relaxation and alertness, how would you possibly take advantage of this third dimension in the future projects? I mean, you mentioned a little bit about that already, but can you make an emphasis on your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I thought it was fascinating because I have played mainly with the concept of color change, from dawn to dusk, and I've done a lot. And brightness is often thought of having brighter light for higher activities. I do think the idea of, I thought the science of being able to have, and I've increased the feeling of no light and that feeling of no, but still having light, and getting that feeling of being able to was really fascinating and probably can be used more in hospitality, because I think that particularly in its indirect way of getting a mood and atmosphere, and maybe a more focused light otherwise. I also think it's really interesting how, if it was architectural, and that's what I mentioned in one space, and you wanted to keep the color temperature because the finishes showed well with it, you could keep that, but still have some of the aspects of mood continued. I think on the whole, my feeling is the warmer environment at night, like you showed, but to have the added benefit of this third dimension where it actually enhances the relaxation is rather unique. Is unique and really fascinating. And I was really interested by all your statistics, for having talked for the last 20 minutes as an artist, in that I had this intuitive feeling of how I want things to be perceived, to realize that now, probably having been under the light quality you talk about, I'll be intuitively wanting to use it.
Very happy to hear that. Okay, thank you very much for your answer. So let me move on to the third question. Sally, what's your expectation on the future of human-centric lighting? Have you seen any recent changes in trend already? I personally think that it would make a great pitch to the business owners of branded hotel chains if they can add more value to the guest experience. Of course, I mean, when the tourism and the business trips are back to normal after this COVID situation, what do you think? Do you think that there would be some demand on this type of new technology incorporated in the architectural lighting design? From business point of view?
I think the new technology is interesting. Like I mentioned before, this third dimension of being able to manipulate the activity of people, whether, as you said earlier on, when you did a previous one with offices, energizing them to the relaxation, I think is interesting, because I think there's a lot being done with the circadian rhythm of how people are. And I think it's because one's body was brought up to go with daylight. So you do have that feeling of warmth to light to warmth again, and less light. And I think to be able to enhance that is really interesting, because in a way what you're trying to do is give the feeling of how the light is getting dimmer and dimmer almost, but you can still read and do activities, but it's also on wind down. And I think that is an interesting aspect. And I think it's curious. And I think that there is a sense of how much one will make it work with the whiter light, I'm not sure, compared to the warmer lights. But I certainly think that very few hotels are producing a totally white experience now. They're wanting, and I think the only time you would have a much whiter light in a environment would be almost if you wanted people to move through quickly, because it doesn't make you want to rest. So I think human-centric lighting is also interesting, that if you're in the same color for too long, it deadens you. So you do need to go through a variety, but it's also tricky because every time you go inside a room or outside a room or outside, you're receiving different messages. So part of it is your own body clock.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your insights to the questions. Well, actually, I see some live questions from the chat window. Well, actually, they're all very much impressed by all the works that you showed. And then, so it seems like they are talking about how beautiful it was. And then, just a moment ago, actually, you answered one of the questions. I mean, one of the listener was asking about the possibility of this using this type of new light in homes, not just the hospitality venues. I remember someone asked that, and then obviously, yeah. Go ahead, please.
So I was going to say, I think when you showed one of the last slides you showed the lamp or light bulb, which could go into your fitting at home. So you've almost shown that it's possible to be there. So you can take it home.
Yes, of course. I'd love to do that too. And there's like could you, scroll down a little bit? No, up, the other way. So I'm, okay, there's a question. Is it a question or comment? Every country are experiencing the change of local weather. Okay, local weather is changing each country. All right, do you think the level of manipulation of the lighting will impact the lifestyle of people in the near future? Quite a tricky question.
I don't know. I've often thought, that in Nordic countries where you have, in the winter, very little natural light, people feel they need more. They need more of the brighter light for longer because their day seems so curtailed. But it's a difficult one to answer. Then you have the countries near the equator that are warmer, that have almost a 12-hour daylit thing. So each country is different. So I think that you react to where you are, but I think you can. I definitely know within controlled environments, certainly I've done a gym recently where I made it warmer in the morning, I've brightened it through the day, and then made it warmer at night. And changed not only the color temperature, but also the level of light. And that was to create different experiences in that gym for an apartment block.
I think there are a lot of projects going on around like controlling the light as scheduling the light as a time of day so that they can actually implement the tunable lighting solution as just you mentioned. And then I think it's going to be there all around the world in a very soon, in a very short time period now. I mean, it adds some cost, but components are getting more available in a lower prices, and then I think it's going to be the time to think about renovating your home, not only looking at the hospitality venues. I think it's a good idea to make a change. All right.
And as I said, that's wonderful. As I said, I think the one thing that lighting does, it totally transforms the space you live in. So if you can make it change throughout the day, it almost changes the decoration and the mood.
Right. Well, thank you very much, Sally, for your talk and sharing your insights about the emotional experience of lighting. And it was absolutely fabulous to have you here today. And I look forward to see you and also look forward to see your new book too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed today. Thank you.
Hope to see you next time.
Lovely.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.